you never know what commonalities, and it's a benefit to you, to be honest, because at the end of the day, if you are your true authentic self in an interview and are confident about who you are and what you can bring to a company, and they don't see you as a fit, or maybe even you don't see them as a fit, that's much better than the company and or the candidate just playing this game and then hiring, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work out. Welcome back to another episode on the HiredUp Podcast. Today's topic, we're delving into interviews, and specifically interview questions, both for companies and for candidates, to assess, are these questions good to ask in the first place for a company? And candidates, how do you answer certain questions based on what the company is looking for and how you can find your perfect fit?
Correct.
As a candidate, and hopefully as a new team member. I'm here. This is Josh, by the way. I'm here with Brieonna.
Hello.
I'm the brand director at HiredUp, and Brieonna is the social media director, and I'm sure that you've been on any of our social platforms. You have seen her. She's doing a fantastic job on that. I think this topic is super prescient.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things going on in the HiredUp or the hiring space right now, from companies who can't seem to find any candidates at all, to tons of job hoppers and tons of people searching for that perfect new company to work for.
Right.
And I think there's been a lot of confusion and back and forth and all these things going on with the workplace schedules and working from home and all these different cultural things as well. A lot of people are leaving companies because of they're not the best culture fit, or a company's culture
or
just
lack
really
of
is
company culture.
Lack of company culture, exactly. So there's so much confusion and changes going on that I feel like really no one really knows what's going on or what to do.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely a lot in the news right now whenever it comes to hiring, working schedules, remote work. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to start with interview questions.
And this is hiring talk, by the way.
Yes.
With Josh and Brieonna.
Yep.
And this is going to be a continuing series where we delve into the just latest going on from the industry, our views upon it, kind of laying out both sides, and hopefully providing you with some value you can take away either as a business owner or as a job seeker.
Correct. All right, so let's hop into it. Our first question is, tell me about your hobbies.
Okay, so tell me about your hobbies. I'm sure we've gotten this at least once in an interview before. And my personal opinion on this is, technically, I appreciate this question being asked by the company.
As do I.
However, I feel like both companies and candidates can utilize this question much better.
Right.
And so from the company's perspective, this should really be about a culture fit type of question.
That's what I was just about to say.
And because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily, this person likes the same stuff that I do, so I'm going to hire them. It's more of, a community building type of question. It's like, what are we going to talk about when we're not talking about work?
Right.
Because a lot of times that makes us a much better team when we can humanize one another and have stuff to talk about other than work. And I think that builds stronger relationships at work. Now, I'm not saying you guys have to hire your best friends or anything.
Right.
But I think having some just commonalities, even if it's something superficial or whatever, like, oh, we enjoy the same, going on the same hiking trails, or we both enjoy this Netflix show and for the same reasons, you know. I think it's an important question to ask, but I think that companies need to really hone in on why they are asking that question.
Not just to ask it for filler kind of, you know, space
breaking
in the interview.
The ice, right.
Right. And I think this is a perfect opportunity as a candidate to really be honest, because you never know what will resonate with the person you're interviewing with. And we've talked about this before. You want to be honest because you want to find that perfect culture fit. You know, you don't want to get in a job and 2 weeks later you don't like it. So if one of your hobbies is like hiking, for example, and your interviewer is like, oh my gosh, no way. I go hiking all the time in Cedar Ridge Nature Preserve, whatever that one is.
Yeah.
Down
it's a good
south.
trail, by the way, if you're in Dallas.
It makes you a great fit with your hiring manager. You'll get along. There's a lot of commonalities. So I think this is a great opportunity to be honest, and, you know, just kind of even, so we've talked about if your hobbies are video games or Netflix or anything like that, you can still spin it in a way to, you know, still make you look good as a candidate while being honest.
Yeah, I think by what I've seen online, a lot of candidates tend to lie in this question or really butter themselves up.
Right.
And so they give the impression that they're this just perfect person.
Yeah.
Who's always doing self-improvement stuff and always, listen, we're all human perfect. And we all like doing things that, you know, don't have to be related to fitness or nutrition or self-improvement, you know. Those things are great, but, you know, listen, video games are cool. Like, if you have a good, interesting reason why you play a certain type of video game and things you get out of it, talk about that. Right. I mean, you don't have to just say, "Oh yeah, I just go on and play Halo and you know, just demolish noobs or something," you know?
Right.
I mean, what do you get out of that? Because the people that I know who are really into video games or really into a specific type of video game, they can really talk about it intellectually and why they enjoy it and what they get out of it.
There's a lot of critical thinking that goes on with some of those games too. It's kind of like playing chess where you're always strategizing and
And speaking of chess, there's that, what's that show?
Exactly. Oh, Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit, right? So if you're into Queen's Gambit, maybe you don't realize that your interviewer is a huge fan of Queen's Gambit and got into chess and all that stuff. You never know what commonalities, and it's a benefit to you to be honest, because at the end of the day, if you are your true authentic self in an interview and are confident about who you are and what you can bring to a company, and they don't see you as a fit, or maybe even you don't see them as a fit, that's much better than the company and or the candidate just playing this game and then hiring, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work out. I would rather take my time a little bit. I mean, obviously there's things that happen, and, you know, everyone needs to pay bills. But if you can, this is such an important thing to be able to take your time and find that perfect fit by being your authentic self.
Correct. Completely agree. Okay, question number 2. How would your friends describe you in 3 words? So you and I have talked about this. We both hate this question.
Yes.
I feel like it's just, I don't know what my friends are thinking. It's just a filler question where I'm going to make up some stuff and make myself sound good. I don't feel like it really gets any depth out of a candidate and as a candidate answering it, it's just awkward because now I'm having to sit here and think, well, what would my friends say? I mean, it's a guessing game, you know?
Yeah, this is a question where everyone lies.
Yes.
Because there's no way you can tell the truth in this question. And it's all a projection of what you think your friends might say about you. It's a weird mental game that they're asking you to play. And, you know, to get a little deeper, and I think I've commented on this before, our friends and our family see us in a completely different way than we see ourselves.
Correct.
So it's near impossible to answer this question.
Right.
I'm not sure why companies ask this question and what they get out of it. Now, it'd be one thing to have, you know, for a company to request references or something and then ask that question.
Right.
How would you describe this person in 3 words? Speaking to them directly.
Right.
That says more, and that's much more honest than you kind of having to play this weird game of what if I was someone else looking at me.
Right.
And so I don't appreciate this question. If you get this question, I would be honest. I would say, I really don't know.
Yeah.
But here is what I strive to be known for. I think that's a much better way to kind of turn the tables, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great way to rephrase it too.
Yeah.
To where the question works for you.
It works for you, and you can be honest. This is how I would like to be seen, rather than, I don't know, my friend Joe thinks I'm kind of a loser and I owe him $20. I think he's looking for me still.
Right. Yeah. Not a great way to answer
So, if you get this question as a candidate, try to reframe it in a way where you can answer it truthfully. And if you're a company, I would really consider not saying this question, possibly reaching out for references and then asking that question directly, or just not using this question.
Yep, agreed. Okay, question number 3. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So I've talked to Josh about this many times. I very strongly dislike this question for a few reasons. And one of them is, you know, in 5 years, so much can change. I think so many people get locked into a vision of their perfect life and what they need to have. And, you know, I need to be married with kids by this age. And in 5 years, we need to be in this stage. But so much can happen in that time. And if you're so locked into this is what my perfect 5 years looks like, and then that doesn't happen, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. So instead, we've talked about reframing questions. I think that companies should either reframe it in a way where you're asking what is the vision for your life, or maybe asking like, what's your career goals? So you're still kind of getting the answer that they're looking for as a company, but as a candidate, you're able to answer it more accurately. And yeah, that's it.
No, I agree. You know, from the company's perspective, they usually ask, what is your 5-year vision, or where do you see yourself in 5 years? I get the sentiment behind the question.
Right.
It's good to have a team of people who have a plan for themselves.
Correct.
You would much rather hire somebody who has some semblance of a vision for themselves beyond today and tomorrow. Because the people who really don't have a vision for themselves really won't make nearly as much growth, if at all, compared to the people who have that vision.
Very correct.
But like you said, putting a time frame on it also kind of puts this weird expectations and kind of, listen, everyone is on, if there's one thing I've learned as a 31-year-old, everyone's on their personal journey.
Exactly.
And you can't really do it wrong.
Right.
So for some people, that means getting married at 22. Other people, they end up waiting until their mid-30s. That doesn't make either one of them right or wrong, or, oh, I did this first, so I'm better.
Exactly. I cannot agree more.
Right. So I think taking away, as a company, asking the question, like Brieonna said, what is the vision that you have for yourself and for your career? You know, where do you see your career heading? Mm-hmm. Without putting a time frame on it.
Right.
Because like you said, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years from now. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
But
you can move, you can have a major life event. I mean, there's so many factors that could go into.
And you can get, as a company, you can get the same sort of answer that you are seeking without putting a time frame on it.
Yep.
And you can see whether someone has thought the least bit about where their trajectory is, where they're going,
right,
where they see themselves as far as a career path.
Agreed. Okay, question number 4. Okay, well, I guess it's not really a question, but interview questions to ask the company. So we've talked about this a lot too. I think using the time after an interview when they say, do you have any questions for us, is the best place as a candidate to really figure out if you're going to be a fit at that company. Especially nowadays too, we're in such a candidate-driven market. This is a great opportunity to really find out, is this the company I want to work for? Do they have the company culture that I'm looking for? Is there flexibility, work hours? You know, all those things that are really important to you as a candidate. This is a great opportunity to get to know the company. Interviews go both ways. It's not an interrogation. And I think a lot of times people kind of get tripped up a little bit in an interview just thinking it's a one-way street, and it's not. So get detailed with your questions that you're asking. Really get to know the company. You know, if wearing jeans on Friday is important to you, you know, ask that. Ask, you know, about the dress code. Ask about, you know, flexibility if that's important to you. But really sit down and figure out what your priorities are whenever it comes to the job that you, or the company that you want to be at, and then use that to fuel your questions.
I agree. And no matter what, you should come with several questions.
Yeah.
If you're doing your due diligence as a candidate in an interview, you already have at least like several questions. And hopefully some of them have been answered throughout the interview process, which is even better. But I know for me, if I know my interviewer beforehand, I'll do some research on them, on their LinkedIn, try to see some of their interests so I can bring that up. Maybe I have the same interests and I can bring that up.
That's a great idea.
But I like reframing the questions. I mean, yes, it's good to research the company and ask about company culture and everything like that. But I think I would get more out of asking the perspective of the actual interviewer and their experience within the company.
That's a really great point. You could even ask, like, what has your experience been in, you know, the time that you've worked here, or what's the favorite project that you've worked on? You know, really get their insight and kind of leverage that to make your decision. And
they'll be much more, in my estimation, they would be much more looser with their answer and much more casual.
More candid.
More candid is a much better word than if you were just to ask about company policies and all this stuff.
Right.
And, you know, if you don't know already, you do need to be asking about salary range. You do need to be asking about benefits. Hopefully, they have already included them in the job posting. Not many people still do that. Not many companies still do that, which is one of the reasons I really love. One of the small things I really love about the HiredUp app is that we do require a salary range and benefits, either yes or no. Those questions to be answered to post a job in the first place. So people already know about that, and they can maybe further inquire about that, but they at least have that foundation of knowledge.
Well, and it's just another aspect where we're adding transparency to the hiring process when otherwise it wouldn't be there.
Exactly. And so knowing your salary, knowing a salary range especially, is great, because then you can kind of see some trajectory there. You can kind of see maybe where, if you are exceeding expectations early on, whereabouts you could start negotiations.
Right, exactly. Which brings me into number 5. What is the salary range for this position?
I skipped ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. But, I know for a lot of people, asking this question can be really uncomfortable. But if you think about it, what is more uncomfortable, waiting until you've gone 5 interviews in and you haven't asked about it, hasn't come up in conversation, and then, right before you're deciding to work for them, they give you a number and it's nowhere near what you were thinking. And then you've just kind of wasted all that time, and now you're struggling. Well, do I work for them? Do I not? It's not really close to what I was wanting. So I think this is a conversation that should be had early on in the interview process, to really, know what you're getting into. But that's the great thing about HiredUp, is that you can see that up front. So you kind of know a starting point whenever it comes to that conversation.
I kind of liken it to relationships in a way, because here's the thing. In relationships, it's really important to know and set your personal boundaries. And if you don't have any, or you haven't thought about that, you're going to get trampled on time and time again.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, we are at work, at a job, to make money, and to be able to provide for ourselves. Now, there are times when, and I've done this in the past too, where, okay, the salary is not up to what I would normally want for this position. However, there is so much potential here that if I make good and I kind of, I can do some stuff on the side, but there's a higher potential for me to not only get that number, but much, much more than that, and to kind of build strong relationships. So I get that there's definitely times, especially if it's a paid internship or an entry-level thing, sometimes, you do have to make a little less in the interim, but the wealth of experience and everything you get,
benefits.
And the long-term benefits. Now, I wouldn't use that as an excuse for companies to just pay people nothing. And just because I've worked in the film industry before, and that's the big game there, is they promise experience and connections, and they just kind of use you. So at the end of the day, it comes down to you being honest with yourself about what's your situation, what are your expenses, what can you afford as a realistic salary. And if that company does not meet those expectations, and you must know early on, like Brieonna said, you don't want to be 5 interviews in, and because that's a waste of your time, that's a waste of the company's time. We don't want to be doing that. So if they don't provide you with a salary or a specific salary early on, it's important to just muster up the guts and ask, because the cons outweigh the pros for waiting.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the last question: what is the trajectory for this position? I love this question. I think it's also a great question that you can ask whenever the interviewer says, do you have any other questions for us? This is a really pointed question where you can get a lot of insight to this position, the growth, or maybe, like we just mentioned, if the salary isn't quite where you want it to be, but there's a lot of growth opportunities in that role. You can really find that out through asking that question.
Absolutely. And I also really like this question because it not only projects you as a candidate as someone who wants to be there long term and kind of wants forward thinking. Exactly. It shows kind of your drive and your passion and your commitment. But also, it's a great question to ask the company to see if they have a good answer for you.
Right.
Because sometimes companies just hire people, not sometimes, probably more often than not. They're hiring people for positions, but they haven't really laid out a growth plan or any semblance of a hierarchy.
Right.
And it's important for them to already know what the possible trajectory is for that job and what a kind of normal, ordinary worker is like. You know, everyone, and I say normal and ordinary, meaning you get your work done.
Right.
Everything's fine. But what an extraordinary person is like, someone who goes above and beyond, or who's really gaining everything fast and can take on more work than originally expected. Where's their trajectory? How fast moving are they to get from, associate to manager to director, whatever it may be. It's important for you to know that they have a plan, and it's important for them to know that you are committed to seeing this position through the long term.
Yeah. And as a candidate, you won't want to work anywhere or for a company that's not sure about the trajectory of your position.
Exactly.
We were just talking about this waste management. They are very fun company to work for, fun company culture, and they also, for their positions, have a direct plan of success for the people who come in and fill that, which is the type of company you want to work for. Right.
And, typically much bigger companies like Fortune 500 plus companies, they will have needed to lay this out a long time ago. They wouldn't be in the position they were if they were just kind of going with the flow. They're too big of a company, winging it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I think it's important for small businesses, for startups, everything. I think it's just as important too. And your employees will thank you, and you will have less turnover and more retention, and you'll have employees and team members who really dedicate much more of themselves to the company.
Correct. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things too, as a company, if you're not clear on your vision, whether it's, as a company as a whole or the vision for this role, then how can you expect someone coming in?
Exactly. It all starts at the top.
Exactly. So that is all of the questions we have. Can you think of any others that come to mind?
Not right off the bat. I'm sure I will come off with a list of 10 after this.
I know, right?
But I do want to say just a side comment here, because I do see something else that's been trending on social media. It's what happens after the interview. And I thought that everyone did kind of what I did, and apparently that's not always the case.
Which is what?
Immediately after the interview, within the day, the same day, sending a thank you email.
Yes.
It literally takes 2 minutes to address the interviewer by name, say, hey, whoever, I appreciate that you taking the time out of your day to get to know me, and for a chance for me to share a bit more about myself and how I may fit within your company.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a soliloquy, just a couple sentences letting them know that you thank them for their time, you enjoyed getting to know them and the company, and looking forward to your decision or moving forward wherever you are in the process.
Right. That is so key. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's shocking that so many people don't do that, because it's kind of like, no one is in charge of your future except for you. If you want something, you have to make it happen. And that's a very small step to just ensure that they know that you're interested, that you're following up with them, that you're putting in the effort to be a recognized candidate by them. It's really shocking to know that people don't do that.
Well, and it's a two-way street too. I'm not just calling out candidates or anything. Like, it's just as important for companies, and this is a huge one, to interact with the candidates, let them know if they're moving forward, let them know if they have moved on,
right,
and they have selected another candidate.
Yeah, don't ghost a candidate.
Ghosting is huge in company hiring practices.
Right.
And that's a bigger conversation with the automation systems and all this stuff, but we need to bring, and this is what HiredUp aims to do, is bring back like the humanity into the hiring process.
Correct.
And also, once, if you are declined, if you didn't make it forward, something that I've done in the past too is also respond with, hey, I really appreciate your time. I totally understand. I would love to know, as I continue my job searching process, if there's anything that you think I could improve on as I move forward.
You've told me that before, and I think that is such an awesome thing to do, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And you can't fix what you don't know. I think a lot of people might be a little scared to ask this, but like I said, you're the only person who's in charge of your future. And if you don't ask it, you're just going to be stuck in this place of not knowing forever. And you may be going to interview, not getting, a second call back or whatever it may be. So asking this question could be really insightful to you as a candidate.
Absolutely. And let me say, a lot of times when I have asked this, no response.
Yeah.
But there are the few times when I do get a response back, and it's usually overwhelmingly like, oh my gosh, no one's ever asked this before. I'm so happy to share our thoughts, And a lot of times it's not what you think it is.
Right.
A lot of times they're just like, this person just had a little more experience in this particular area, and that was more of the focus of the job. At least for me, I've always gotten, you're great and all this stuff. There was just someone who had a little more experience in this one area.
Correct. And
we went with them. And but there was also some times when I got feedback that you didn't seem as energized as our previous interviews, and that had some sort of effect on the interview. Right. And so it's good to know that.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have thought that afterwards, like maybe I was being feeling lethargic for some reason or whatever.
Right.
But that's important to know, so that I know how I'm coming off to another person as I'm interviewing, and I can be more cognizant of that in the future.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Another thing, I think Evan brought this up the other day on our Instagram Live that we did, but he mentioned also after an interview, finding the interviewer on LinkedIn and sending them like a little message very similar to, hey, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I really enjoyed it. I'm very excited about this opportunity. But I think that's also a really good idea too, of just like directly interacting with the interviewer, just making sure you're top of mind and really just reinforcing your enthusiasm and excitement for the potential.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to communication.
Exactly.
Good communication between the company and the potential candidate. Good communication, internally with the company.
All life boils down to communication.
It
Personal,
does.
Work life, relationships, communication is so key.
And 95% nonverbal.
I know, that's crazy. We talk about that all the time, and it still blows my mind.
Yeah. So, well, guys, hopefully this was helpful in some way to you guys, whether you are a business owner or whether you are in the job seeking process right now. Let us know what your experiences are, any questions that may have stumped you in the past as a candidate, any sort of stories you have as a company hiring candidates, or maybe some of the struggles that you've had recently. We'd love to know. We'd love to interact with you and help in any way we can.
Absolutely. Share your stories with us, whether that's DMing us on Instagram or LinkedIn or anything like that. We want to hear from you guys and kind of get y'all's feedback on this topic.
Absolutely. And just so you know, the full videos of these podcasts are always on our YouTube channel, and we do share clips on our various social medias as well. So make sure to check those out and let us know what you think.
Yep. All right.
All right.